All right, so I'm going to end this poll and we can move on. All right, so with that, we have two team members that are here from the Parks Department. We have Scott Spooner and Melissa Schaap. And I believe it's Scott that's going to say a few words about the project and just give a general overview.
Yes. So my name is Scott Spooner. I'm Deputy Parks Manager in charge of maintenance for the City of Ann Arbor. I first learned of this project when a neighbor asked me a question about what was going on in Leslie Park. And at that point, it was in early May. And so I did not have an idea of what he was talking about. I was able to track down Shunasi, and she let me know what she had planned. And it sounded like a good idea to me. And so then, with there already being work done in Leslie Park on this project, we had to bring it back around to what we would have a normal procedure be for somebody to work on something like this in the parks. Mm-hmm. We have a little bit of a precedent in that we have a Project Grow in the city. And if we look at the rules for the Project Grow, once a proposed community garden or new community garden site has been identified, a public neighborhood meeting will be held. So that's the third out of 7 steps in the Project Grow. The first 2 have to do with the Project Grow organization, the nonprofit that runs Project Grow. Fourth, a mailing will be sent to the neighbors within 1/4 mile of the proposed site. We did that. And the 5th is that we have a public meeting with the city and a representative from Project Grow jointly running the meeting. Since we don't have Project Grow, we have Shunasi and Robin here from this proposed project, and then I'm representing the city. The next steps from here are, if the proposed garden is generally well accepted as determined by city staff, then city staff and a representative from Project Grow, in this case, not Project Grow, but this group, will inform the Park Advisory Commission of the new garden in an informational memorandum. If the proposed garden is not generally well accepted as determined by city staff, then city staff will provide PAC with a recommendation as to whether or not to proceed with the proposed site. PAC will provide a recommendation at their next available regularly scheduled meeting, and the recommendation of PAC shall be final. So what we're doing is we are bringing this project, it got started a little early without going through what would be the preferred steps. But what we're doing is bringing this process back around so that we can get aligned with those steps. And this public meeting is the first step. And then after we get some comments from the public, we will then go to PAC with a recommendation. And then at that point, we'll follow with that. That's really all I have. If there are any.
I do have somebody with a hand raised, and that's Joe, if you wanted to ask your question.
Hi, I just want to let you know that I am on the board of Project Grow, and I am here to gather information. We got an email on this and found out it existed just a couple weeks ago, and this is the first informational meeting that we've had on it. So we don't. I don't really know exactly. Personally, I don't know exactly what a food forest is. I looked it up a little bit, and it does sound a little different than a Project Grow garden.
Yeah,
but we're going to find out tonight, right? That's why we're here.
Yeah. Yes. So So this is not going to be affiliated with Project Grow. This is going to be affiliated with an as yet unnamed entity.
Northside Food Forest Coalition.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, in this spirit, Joe and everybody, I think probably it's going to be most advantageous to hear the presentation through and to hold your questions. You know, we definitely want to hear your questions and your feedback, but we'll probably answer a fair few of those questions with the presentation and save us all some time that way. Anything else, Scott?
That's all I have.
Okay. So,
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start our slideshow with the presentation, and we will get started. All right, so since we have, I'm going to go ahead and just say a couple of technical things since it's already on my screen and demanding my attention. We're going to have we have the ability to see each other and also the slideshow. And so when it goes to full screen like this, if you look at the top left-hand corner, you have the option to totally hide all of the people, make it so you can just see the person speaking or see them in a column or a grid. You can see all those options, and you can also pick it up and move it around. And we suggest that you kind of play with that and find the way that you can see however much you want of the people while still being able to see the full slideshow, because we do want to make sure you get the whole benefit of it.
thanks, Robin. So I am Shanasi Rose, and I'm really excited to be with all of you here tonight. I'm glad that there's a decent turnout and lots of faces and names that we don't know yet. And so I want to thank you for being here, and also want to reiterate a couple of things that Heather shared. This is a community engagement process, and this project and this proposal is very much in a community engagement and community building spirit. And I know that we're all, you know, walking through the same sort of general climate in our lives now, and it feels really important that as we engage in this process of information sharing and questions and answers and feedback, that we do that in a spirit of mutual trust and respect. And so with that said, I want to say a little bit about our coalition, which is a really exciting part of the work for us. So there are a good number of people from all across Ann Arbor who are engaged in a really active and core way in the Northside Food Forest proposal and project. And it's been amazing to us to be able to draw these people together and benefit from, you know, a range of talents. Like Evan here has a background in organic farming, and Vishnu brings engineering to us, and both Kathleen, who's one of our elders, and Ile here have degrees or are working on degrees in ecology, land management, environmental impact. Naya and Nora, who are the youth among us in this particular image of our coalition, are really interested in youth engagement at the site and education. And Maro, who doesn't have agricultural background, is doing all of the graphic design. And like, we really have people coming together, many of whom live in this community, Arrowwood, where I have been for 33 years, adjacent to the park, but also others from other parts of the city who are just very excited about a regenerative project and who are lending their time and energy and skills. So that's a brief overview, and there are more people than are pictured here, but these are a bunch of the people who are really showing up for the backbone of the work. And then Robin and I, here's me and here's Robin, we are serving as liaisons with the city for this community. And that's primarily because we have a background in community organizing, and also we are the ones who have the certification in permaculture design. And So since we've been very top heavy so far in the administrative part of things, that's where we are shining and sort of being of service here. And kind of echoing what Scott said, some of what Scott said, I want to just say a little bit about how we got started. You know, we find ourselves, all of us, in this global health crisis and really face to face with what's happening with the climate, and a lot of people are motivated to make positive change, and Ann Arbor is ripe for that. And it came about very organically, the idea of doing a regenerative agricultural project in a public way. And so I reached out to my city council members, and Jeff in particular, who's my council member here in Ward 1, was very generous and kind of put feelers out across the city to see whether or not there would be support or enthusiasm for the project, and got back to us and said that there was support and enthusiasm for the project. And at which point, which is how we inadvertently circumvented the normal channels of how we go about this, we took that to mean that we could get started with it while we were also going through the actual technical process. And just to set that record straight, that wasn't Jeff's error, that was really my error. And since then, you know, since Scott tracked me down and we started these conversations, it's been a joy to work with the city in collaboration and get to meet more people that way. And the last thing I'll say about sort of the breadth and depth of people who have expressed interest is that once we knew we were moving toward explicit wider public engagement, the coalition facilitated an online survey to just put up signage at the park and get people to weigh in and say what they were thinking. And we've had a good many responses to that survey from lots of people we haven't known before the project, and people have been very generous and excited to share their ideas or share their skills and long to collaborate with us. So we will say this again later in the meeting, but if there are those among you who would like to be a part of work days or, you know, keep receiving updates about how it's going, we'll take email addresses later on. So that's that. Here's the place. So obviously I don't know where all of you live who are here. I live right in this co-op here, and I have for 33 years, and I'm very familiar with this area, which is really how the idea for the place came about. And over the years of living here, this is Leslie Park, which is on the north side of Ann Arbor. Here's the Leslie Golf Course and the fence line here. And way over this way, heading north, is Duvarin Road, which is the only way that you can get into the park. It's sort of odd that way. But over the years, the use of the park has evolved. And, you know, in the first 20 or so years that I lived here, we didn't have children's sports happening out back in an organized way. And now we do. And this little area down here where we have the design superimposed is the proposed site of the food forest, and it is 1/5 of 1 acre of all of our city parkland that we are asking for the support to engage this really exciting experiment.
So here we want to show, not there, here we would like to show just some of what it looks like on the ground at the food forest as opposed to that aerial view of the satellite map, and talk a little bit about it as a community resilience project. So here we have a number of the members of the coalition working or enjoying the food forest, and some of the kids at the local daycare enjoying the textures and smells of the food forest. And like Shanasi said, this for us was born out of the way that so many things were thrown up in the air once the pandemic hit here. And it was so clear that we were, you know, people's routines, people's financial security, our food systems, all of these things were coming into major question. And so for us, having this be a community resilience project is really core to why we're so enthusiastic about it, as a way to create a space for the community, and really excited about it being a budding Arrowwood like that. Is, you know, affordable living option, cooperatively owned, and many of our coalition members live. Just having it be a place for the community to be able to band together and manifest solutions to problems that we're facing together, experience rest and respite and relief together. and have that way of coming together as a community towards a common goal.
And one other thing that I'll say there briefly is that we had been able to do these 3 work weekends in a COVID safe way, where, you know, if you see a few of us there who don't have masks on, we're potting together and we're the only ones who are there at that time. But we've been able to have people come and work in a given area, know that they have masks on, make it possible to physically distance and still feel like we are a part of something together, which in and of itself has been such a meaningful thing during such stress, you know.
So we want to talk a little bit about how this project fits into the city as a whole. And when we first started looking at the possibility, we came across the Ann Arbor Sustainability Framework goals. And we're really excited to see the ways that this project matches them so well and is such a good fit for them. And this quote at the top here is from the website for the Office of Sustainability and Innovation. It says, in 2018, the city reset its sustainability work by laser focusing on climate action. And I really love how these 9 goals that the forest explicitly meets are all very different, and also many of them do come at addressing climate action from these different directions. And so for anyone who can't see it, I'll read them quickly. They are energy conservation, engaged community, active living and learning, sustainable systems, integrated land use, clean air and water, healthy ecosystems, responsible resource use, and local food. And one of the things we've got the chance to be in touch with the Office of Sustainability and Innovations and looking down the line at partnering them with the Sustaining Ann Arbor Together grant, which I'll talk a bit more about later. But really struck in these conversations and in our work by how meeting these sustainability goals and addressing climate action is asking us to push past the bounds of things as they have been done. These are unprecedented problems and we need unprecedented solutions to answer them. And so I'm just, I know we are feeling so grateful for the ways the city is committed to that and been creative and flexible and able to, work with us after this kind of hiccup in terms of our misunderstanding how we got started and work towards these creative solutions together. And because this is an example of an integrated land use right here, which is one of the goals, and how I'm talking about how we're going to be meeting these essential sustainability framework goals through the Northside Food Forest. And the 3 that we're mostly going to focus on, because they do all interrelate, is localizing food, implementing sustainable and regenerative systems, and facilitating community engagement.
Thanks, Robin. So, as I said earlier on, while lots of people in the coalition bring together really necessary skills, I mean, you really learn it takes a village to be a village. And there are certain things about the technical side of rainwater catchment, for example, that's not going to be my thing. But Robin and I do have that background and certification in permacultural design. And so there's a passion about the way that cities all across the country are getting on board with the model of the food forest, the community food forest, the public food forest, as a way to solve, some really, really trying problems that we are facing. Among those things, food insecurity, but also ecological regeneration. And so in Atlanta, Georgia, there's a 7-acre, it's the largest public food forest in the country. In Los Angeles, Ron Finley is doing amazing work there. He just started digging up the strip of land outside of his dwelling, and Seattle, Washington, Traverse City, Bozeman, Montana, like good work happening, and it feels really exciting to be a part of a coalition of people and to be working with the city collaboratively to get Ann Arbor experimenting with this and hopefully moving it forward as a part of these sustainable solutions.
So in order to talk about sustainable systems, we want to briefly touch on some of the real problems that sustainable systems cause. And these 4 examples here are ones that are caused in conventional agriculture, but also by many of the other existing systems that can be solved by this sort of system that we're talking about. And this could be its own 2-hour-long webinar on its own, and I'm sure some of us have been to that class in various forms. So we're going to just briefly touch on these. And I do want to clarify that we're talking about them both how they specifically work and solve real problems on this 1/5 of an acre site and more generally. And the reason for that is because our dream for this site is that it can be an educational site where people come here and get the education and the inspiration to be able to go manifest these solutions in other places. And so going through these, we've got, habitat loss is a huge issue for creating space for farming. Desertification, it comes down to eroding the soil and depleting the soil of its nutrients, as well as losing water from the water table. Climate disruption, here we're mostly talking about carbon emissions, both from the machines used to grow and harvest food and from transporting it hundreds and thousands of miles. And then waste and food insecurity, from having this very non-global system, there are huge areas where there's just not access to quality food, and then huge waste of quality food or food that isn't grown in sustainable ways down the line in other places. Mm-hmm. And so with a food forest, it addresses habitat loss in 2 ways. One is that it creates habitat for pollinators and beneficial insects and birds and some of the fauna that we really want to have a space for in our community. And it also uses vertical space and integrates plantings in a way that means you can grow more food in less space. And so when we look at our agricultural needs and our needs to have food, we're able to not take up as much space and leave more habitat. And food forests are also designed specifically to create really beautiful, rich topsoil and to help sink water and maintain and help the water cycle and the water table in the area thrive and be healthy. And in this particular instance, we're also talking about local food with a food forest, which is a huge part of the model. And that helps address climate disruption, both by not having the transport and having very little to no machinery in terms of growing the food, which serves to not only reduce carbon emissions, but it actually becomes a carbon negative system, meaning that a food forest will pull carbon from the atmosphere and sink it in the landscape and the plants and bring down the entire carbon footprint for the city of Ann Arbor just by being there and doing its thing. Ta-da. And then a huge part for us of sorry, do you want to jump in, Shanasi?
No.
Okay. And then addressing both waste and food insecurity by having this hyperlocal food source. For us from the beginning, being able to provide free food to all residents who are interested is a huge part of the motivation for the food forest, and can help address both of these issues in one really clear way.
Thank you. So I am very accustomed to teaching in an intergenerational capacity, and I have no idea who I'm sitting with and what your level of familiarity with any of this is, or infamiliarity. So I'm going to kind of stretch and try to both make it very basic and respectful of the fact that, we're sitting with intelligent people here, and also bearing in mind that there's going to be room for questions and comments once we're done with this. So to our Project Grow friend, a food forest, which is super exciting, I think, is basically grown in tiers. It's an edible forest. And this is a concept that's not new. Like, you can go back quite literally thousands of years. You can look in southern India, but also throughout the United States, as we just showed you, and see that it's a well-established concept that lends well-established benefits. And the basic idea is that the plantings happen in such a way that emulate or mimic an actual forest, the ecological structure of a forest. And in this instance, because it's a very small site, it's 1/5 of an acre, we wouldn't be doing the full-fledged food forest model, which will often include nut trees, which take a very long time to establish and get to be 100 feet tall. And, you need much more space for that. But in general, we are starting with fruit trees, berry bushes, herbaceous perennials, ground covers, climbing vines, and root plants. And you get the idea of the way that they interact with each other. And they create this, as Robin was saying, this multifaceted benefit of making an optimal environment for beneficial insects and, you know, provide habitat for really important aspects and members of our ecosystem, and also take up less space and less water, significantly less water. So once a food forest is established, it is a self-regulating system, which is pretty amazing to watch happen. One of the things that finally drew me in after decades of organic gardening and integrated land use and a passion for permaculture to go and do the certification is because we're looking at the horror that is topsoil loss in the United States, and the statistics are scary if you're aware of them. And we were able to look at the site that we went to do our training in sort of a ragtag site like this. It started out being built 5 inches of topsoil in 6 years in the food forest area. And that is pretty mind-blowing. You know, they say that in terms of halting the impact of climate crisis, mending our topsoil situation, which often has to do with desertification, and cleaning our oceans are the primary things that we need to do. And we don't really know how to expedite the cleaning of oceans, but we do know how to build topsoil. And this project would allow Ann Arbor to prioritize a small area where that's what we're focusing on. And we're doing it as a community. As of now, it has been all volunteer basis, which is pretty extraordinary, you know. So here's the next part where I'm going to sound like that intergenerational teacher. Here you have before you the basic design for the food forest. I am looking at this and thinking, you may think that my granddaughter, who just started kindergarten, could have done this drawing. And probably she could have, because she's very talented. And, you know, while it looks like a very simple drawing and we want to present it in a way that is simple, a lot of care and a lot of thought goes into the bones of good design. And so here is the path. Right over here would be the playground. There's a trail from the Black Pond Woods here. And then what we are looking at is these light green areas. All of the light green areas are food forest guilds that we would establish in that multi-tiered planting that we're talking about. And that's all perennial planting. So some of those fruit trees are already in, and obviously the white parts are paths here. We're incorporating a lot of permacultural concepts, including these keyhole paths down here. And there's, you know, elder bushes and hazelnut bushes and peach trees and apple trees and honeyberry bushes. And there are plant guilds happening around the fruit trees. And then the dark green here are annual plantings. And right now, this design is actually technically a hybrid food forest and edible landscape combination. And in this center here, we have an herb spiral and some food beds that have already been planted this year. And then at the back, that big green area, we're proposing that would be the children's garden, and that there's room for annual plantings. Now, Project Grow people know a lot about annual plantings, what it takes to care for annual plantings and have people be responsible for that. And establishing the food forest will take some time and effort and patience, but it is a self-regulating system once it is on its feet. And annual plantings take consistent maintenance, you know, every year after year after year after year. So whether or not this dark green part remains and space for annual plantings depends on the level of consistency with community engagement and participation, and how handing off the checklist to various volunteers will go. It's perfectly viable to transition those areas to further food forest plantings and just increase the area that is an established perennial self-regulating system.
So on that note, we wanted to talk a little bit about maintenance, because ongoing maintenance is one of the keys for a successful legacy project. And our plan for putting sustainable systems in place, we have things for water catchment and energy conservation, as well as what Shnasi was talking about, regenerative agriculture, and ecological self-regulation. So by the nature of a food forest, some of the maintenance is already built in because of the ways it's self-regulating, and it doesn't take the same amount of work that an annual garden would, like she said. And so that addresses some of the maintenance. And of course, there is still some of the minimal maintenance and then the harvesting that will need to be done by people. And this comes down to human labor and a well-organized contingent of community engagement and volunteers. And there's a really broad range for what that can look like. There are people who we've already heard from who just want to be updated about the project. There are people who might be interested in not necessarily helping, but getting food from there, or have ideas about things they might like to see planted there that they would be excited to have growing nearby. And that community engagement is essential for this kind of project. And that's part of why we're so excited to be here with you tonight. And as Shanasi said, will be, there's going to be the information on the Leslie Park website, as we had at the beginning that Heather pointed out. And we're also going to have the option for updates that are sent to people. And so if you're interested in being on that list, either to receive updates, to be part of the crew for planting days, or for educational things that may happen down the line, should this be approved, any of those things, please let us know, and you can give us your email and your name in the chat, and we'll put you on that list. And a lot of what it comes down to in terms of organizing this and making sure we can have successful maintenance is having things clearly delineated, having clear checklists for what needs to happen in each season, having clear volunteer job descriptions, having clear channels of communication. And Shanasi and I both have a number of years in community engagement with that kind of passing off of jobs, checking in on it, coming back to it. And we will be using that experience in terms of implementing these checklists and job descriptions for the food forest.
So this is a project created by and for our community to care for our future, demonstrating what is possible through clear intention, sound organization, and hands-on education to set in motion a legacy of well-being for generations to come. You can go to the next slide. Just for a second, in closing, we want to talk about what a legacy is, and where we find ourselves, at this unprecedented crossroads in human evolution, really. We have never faced a global pandemic. We all know, right, what the climate crisis looks like, what the San Francisco skies look like now. And I think one of the biggest challenges is to balance our awareness with ways that we can practically engage in hopeful activity. And it doesn't help to just be aware of the way that things are falling apart and not find a way in to be a part of the solution. And we're actually really proud of these people and our collective efforts, and grateful for the city working with us. And just like, this is just glimpsing some of our age range, some of our people. Nora is 16 and sat down at the food forest and said, oh my God, like, we're planting trees. I've never even thought about it before. I'm living with trees that were planted long before I was born, and now I can plant trees for people who will even come after me. And Evan, who borders the park here, lives in our community and has 2 little girls. They're out there with him, being a part of making sure things are watered while we're hauling buckets right now. And, Naya at 20 works at the daycare that's here. We saw those pictures of just one of my neighbors sent, like, look at, here's pictures of kids at the food forest who are really excited about the smells and the scents and what's happening there. And Naya has a passion about educating children and where food comes from specifically. Kathleen is a grandmother. Eli is working on his degree on people and ecology. And all of us are invested in this project, not only for what it gives us now, but for the foundation it can lay for the future. So thank you for being here with us tonight. And we're going to segue out of this part now. And we'd love to hear from you. Some questions have already been happening in chat and I'm not going to be the person to surface those questions because that's not where I shine, but we want to address them. And we just want to say that, you know, in this welcoming of public input, we want to hear how you feel about it, you know, even if you're excited about it, you have good questions about it, you have concerns, and we trust that we'll roll in this part of the evening and the conversation in a spirit of mutual respect.
All right,
Just,
so, oh, go ahead, Barbara.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I can imagine being in this situation, being like, well, I don't have any questions, I have nothing to say. We really are excited to hear what you think about it. If you're excited, if you have reservations, any of the things. And then I think I was just going to resurface some of the logistics, but it sounds like Heather, you were going to do that.
Oh yeah, I was just going to remind people if they wanted to raise their hand if they're on the computer. But if you're on the phone, I see that we do have one guest that's on the phone. That is *9. So if you wanted to virtually raise your hand, then you can press *9. And then we have the chat feature as well to ask questions.
And while we're waiting, I do see this one question I can answer. You said no online survey was shared with us. Can you please tell us how this was circulated? And it was on the sign at the park where the food forest site is. And I can also get the link for it and put it in the chat. So anyone who's interested can grab it from there and fill out the survey if you would like.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
All right, I see a hand raised by Sarah Rose if you wanted to ask your question.
Mine's less of a question, more of a comment, especially just getting the ball rolling. Maybe it'll make more people comfortable to share. But I live in Arrowwood. You know, I know some of the organizers well, but I have just been really excited about the food forest. I go for walks in the neighborhood before I start remote work every day, and walking past it, seeing other people in the neighborhood, checking it out, looking at the sign, looking at the little herb spiral in the middle, and also seeing people in the neighborhood starting to take you know, some of the zucchini or take some of the fresh herbs to use and cook. And I just picked some parsley that I put into a salad from the herb garden, and I just really enjoyed. I know it's just in the beginning stages, and hopefully it will continue from here, because all of the you know, interactions that I've seen from just, you know, anecdotally people in the neighborhood has been really positive.
Thank you.
We did also have a question about the aspirational goals and how they'll be measured.
Yeah.
And is there going to be an evaluation at some future time?
I think that that is a great question, and I think that that always has to be in place with any project, and particularly a community project. And can we answer you this evening exactly what the structure of that evaluation will be? No way, because what we are focusing on right now is getting all of this work done to get it on its feet and get it before you. But do we hold a sound commitment to this evaluation? Absolutely. And we're blessed to have a lot of people who are really motivated to remain a part of this process, you know.
And I will say there are some quantitative things we know we'll be measuring, such as looking at the topsoil and the development of topsoil, looking at the yield of herbs and food as the forest grows, and also community engagement through, you know, how many people are engaging in these various ways, and also the qualitative of just how is this going, how is this moving. And I think that that kind of evaluation and the questions to be asking there is another great place for community engagement, because you may have ideas for questions to be looking at that we haven't thought of yet, and that will be a really valuable contribution.
Mm-hmm. Which is why, too, part of, I think, building an email list so people can get notifications about things as they are evolving. You know, some good questions we've had about harvest, and if there's an excess, which right now, even with this tiny little bit that's happening, I really don't anticipate there will be, but how will we share? And one of the visions we have are harvest days, where when we are less constrained by the circumstances we find ourselves in now, we can have, you know, a harvest little mini festival a couple times, early harvest and late harvest, and have people come out and and gather what's there. And then there are questions about what about people in the community who most need the food, but might not be able to get there. So all kinds of good questions have already also come forward in that online survey. And that's a great place to weigh in too. But we'd love to hear from you tonight. Like, does it sound exciting? Would you want to be a part of it? You know, any of
Let me
that.
ask a question. Is it about the balance between equity in the community and economics of sustainability, right? I mean, it's a great idea, obviously, in its first iteration, but as we cycle through the years, as we learn our lessons, is there going to be an expectation of continued funding from the city to keep this, if things go, you know, a little bit lower at some point? How are we going to make those measurements, number one? Number two,
Yeah.
point out about the equity aspect. People who are contributing may not fully involve those who are looking to take away from it. How do we ensure that balance?
I think that those are really good questions, and these are models that we have been studying a tremendous amount. As of now, none of this has cost the city 1 penny. And the only funding that we are looking for from the city at this point is through I mean, none of the actual work on site. Obviously, Scott and Heather and Melissa are here, and there is engagement in that way. But what a better thing to engage in terms of really genuinely meeting these sustainability goals. And the only funding that we are looking to receive for the project as of this point from the city is through a sustainability grant. And that money is already earmarked for efforts of this nature. And so I mean, really, if it works as it is meant to, and we have shown you and seen ourselves examples of many food forests that are well established and thriving, then it actually diminishes the area of, I mean, 1/5 of an acre. It doesn't really take much off Scott's plate, but you know, it does diminish the area that requires maintenance and the cost of that maintenance on the part of the city.
And one of the great things about the model of a food forest in terms of this question around ongoing cost is that it is something that requires a lot of front end work and resources and money, and then far less once it establishes and becomes self-regulating. And so our goal and plan is to be applying for and hopefully receiving the Sustaining Ann Arbor Together grant, which, as Shanasi said, and I appreciate you asking this question because it reminds me I meant to come back to this grant and forgot. It's already allocated for this. It's meant specifically for projects that meet the sustainability framework goals. And so the idea is we can use those funds to do those startup costs of everything that it takes to get those plants in, buying those plants, doing the work all of those things that need to happen to get them established. And then once they're established, it's really the volunteer labor of those parts of minimal upkeep and harvest that need to happen, especially if we phase out the annual plantings. But either way, that can be something that doesn't necessarily require ongoing financial support from the city.
We have about 4 hands up that I'm seeing. So we have Ed, Joe, Andrew, and Pam. So we'll go in that order. So Ed, if you wanted to ask your question or make your comment.
You have to unmute yourself. No?
Here, I can try to unmute you.
He looks like he is unmuted. I don't know what's happening there.
Ed, are you able to ask your question? Okay, we'll circle back to you.
And/or you could type it into chat. I know that's very frustrating.
Right over here.
Oh, you're here? Okay, great.
All right. Sorry, my wife and I are next to each other.
Oh.
So we live, I guess, west and a little bit south of this area. Love it. Play pickleball very near this site, but I haven't actually been over there. So I will as soon as I can. Very excited about this opportunity. It seems amazing. So thank you so much for everybody, all the effort you've put in so far. I guess my questions are, what you've described this a little bit, but a little bit more detail about where do you stand right now? I mean, how much is kind of developed and planted? And then what do you see as your immediate next steps?
So right now we are working within a defined 60 by 90 foot area, and should we get approved to go forward, that would expand to 90 by 90 feet for just a little bit there. And we have, our plan was in the spring to get some of the fruit trees in because they take the longest to establish, and a couple of nut bushes, and work on some of the structural components. So, I mean, not building structures, but bed structure. And should we get approved, which we're really hoping we will, obviously, then the very next step this autumn, if everything falls into place, is that we would prepare the rest of that area with sheet mulching so that it would be plantable in the spring. And we are also working on simultaneously the grant application that everyone has recommended that we go for in order to get some funding, because so far it's just been us donating, you know, people from the coalition and some beyond, just like who are interested in supporting the project. And I did see that someone said there has been some cost to Arrowwood because of the water that has been coming, and that is true, and it's been a very, very minimal amount of water, which is part of the precedent of a food forest, is that, you know, a couple of us who live on the park have filled some 5-gallon buckets when we've had many days in a row of really hot, dry weather because we want to preserve those fruit trees. So it's been nominal and probably less than I water my garden, and I've been living here for 33 years. So I hope that that answers your question, and thanks for bringing it.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, Joe. Oh, you got to unmute.
Sorry, it takes a moment to unmute, doesn't it?
It does.
This is really great. It's really exciting. You know, I had looked it up on food forests, and it was a lot of trees, and I thought, are they gonna be growing trees over there?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you guys are gonna be doing, is growing trees. That's pretty cool. Now, you did have one section in the north section of it that's annuals. I assume you just grow your average vegetable crops there. Are you planning on, I know that this is supposed to be done without having to have outside water. This is only for my own curiosity, by the way.
Sure.
It's not
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Project Cross. Although they're going to be asking me these questions probably. There's a meeting, starting in 4 minutes that I'm supposed to be at, but I could be a little late. And they're going to be wanting to know. They'll want updates from me, and I probably have horrible answers, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
But are you planning on supplying water there, or are you going to go without?
That's a good question. One of the features in the design, you will see that little community area features a building that is a shed on one side and then just an open awning on the other side. Now, this is all pending approval, but we have been getting support for this, you know, volunteer contract support. It looks like we've nailed down an architect. And that would be for rainwater catchment. Like, the primary reason that we actually thought to include this on site, which ends up serving many, many functions. One of the things about permaculture is that it stacks functions. So we would have a place to store our tools. Under the awning, we would have a work area for dealing with harvest or community gathering and teaching or whatever's happening there. But we also primarily decided the square footage of that roof in order to engage rainwater catchment on site. And again, even now this year, when the trees are babies and we did have some food crops there, watering was kept to a very, very, very minimum. And going forward, once the forest establishes, it's much less necessary. But we feel like it's a really important thing to teach that sustainable principle and concept and practice, you know. So
and I think I know you have to go, Joe, but would love to stay in touch both with you and other people at Project Grow, because as we said, there's that part, it's at actually the south side. We flipped it just to confuse you, because it'll get more sun and more so the southern exposure. And that's the area for the lower growing plants where the trees aren't going to shade them out. And would love to just, you know, hear more about Project Grow and see if you are interested in learning more about the project and what it is to have these updates and be in touch.
Well, I can't wait to come over and look at it. I did garden at Food Gatherers for 3 years before we were able to get a new site, which is out in Scio. I live on the other side of town, though. Actually, I live over here on the west side. But the project, this is this is the name of this organization is Northside Community Food Resilience Project.
The Northside Food Forest Coalition. So
Oh,
right
Northside
now,
Food Course. Okay. I
yeah,
got,
yeah.
all right. And I'm sorry, Northside Food Forest Coalition.
If you
That's easy
pop
enough.
your info, if you pop your name and your email into the chat, then
Yes.
we will keep you. We'll get you on the list that will keep you.
Yeah,
up.
I was going to suggest I do that, to put it in the chat. I don't think I have any other questions. You know, Project Grow does, we do have a lot of knowledge. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that have a ton of knowledge and I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in it. We do have at least one member that's under a mile from I know he's under a mile from Leslie Park. So, but anyhow, I don't know how much what we have in other kind of resources, but
Yeah.
because we're always resource constrained, of course, everybody's
Yeah.
very busy. But
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this. I do know one thing: we need more sites. We need more sites.
Yeah.
Not everybody agrees on that, but agrees with me on that. But the west side and the west side, we can only sell half plots. On the east side,
Yeah.
they fill up really early. So
Yeah.
I know, and there's room. So,
Yeah,
but
and
it's
that feedback
really,
came to us in the public survey too, that people want more space, including
yep.
for your garden. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
wait a minute. I need to hear that again now. I need to bring this to the board. What you heard people saying they
It did
need more
come to
space.
us in the public survey that people are wanting more space for growing, and including the dilemma of trying to get a Project Grow garden and not being able to. So
No
get in touch
kidding.
with us. Like, I feel like it's obvious that we're a natural fit and we are, organizations that should liaise. So
Oh yeah,
let us know your contact information.
I will do that. There's one other question that somebody already asked. I'm going to ask it now. But what are you doing about deer problems?
Well, we're going to put in basic protection around the fruit trees while they are young, which is the most important thing at this point. And the deer are coming through, but they're not decimating anything. So far, so good.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very exciting. I really like it.
All right, Andrew.
Hi, am I getting through?
You are.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So well, that actually kind of segues perfectly into my kind of comment. And I work on homelessness in my day job at the Office of Community and Economic Development. So I'm a bit in the county here, and I'm a bit used to thinking about these kind of big systemic problems. And it seems to me that this project is really limited by scale because of its location. And so my big feedback is, and it's also sort of in the middle of everything because there's two trailheads, there's bike trails right there. I've already seen joggers and bikers having difficulty navigating it. So I guess I'm just wondering, why is it in this cramped location where trees are going to radically change the feeling of that area of the park and make it feel much smaller, instead of taking advantage of the actually underutilized part of the park, that giant field along the driveway, where if this project is successful, it would have opportunities to expand. There'd be room for the additional gardens people are asking for. I mean, it just seems to me you picked the actually busiest part of the park that's used consistently year round.
Thank you for bringing that forward. And when you say the giant part of the park that runs along the driveway, you mean the road up?
Yeah, there's like a huge field that's basically seldom used.
Yeah, I mean, that field is actually used for community sports when community sports are happening. And I think it's a great question to ask about scale. And it's good to hear that you work in addressing homelessness. Arrowwood, where I have lived for 33 years, is one of the few affordable living options. And we're actually really excited about it being right here and connected to this particular community. And on the work days that we had out there, I live here, I've lived here for 33 years. Like I said, I'm out there all the time. Lots of people were still using the trails, and the whole time that we were working, and nobody was intersecting. This area doesn't interfere with those trails deliberately, which is sort of the foundation of good and thoughtful design. I know the way that, you know, mountain bikes come through there and joggers come through there, and many of them just started to get familiar with us and expressed a lot of enthusiasm for the project. So I think like thinking about larger scale on down the road is definitely a dream, but the scale is deliberately small right now, both for the coalition and for the city, because we're learning together, you know. So thank you.
And we do, like Shanasi said, have a dream of this being a pilot project. And so once we have the model established and this is, there's more knowledge about food forest in the city because of engagement in this particular project, I think it's entirely possible we may be able to work with the city and see what other spaces might be a good fit, because scale, like Shanasi said and you said, is a really important factor.
Thank you. And thanks for your feedback, Andrew. I see your comment there.
All right, Pamela.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Am I successfully
Yes.
unmuted?
Hello.
All right, and sort of full disclosure, as an academic, my question is more of a comment, because that's how we roll. So I'm a resident of Arrowwood, and I use Leslie Park every day.
Mm-hmm.
And the site of this food forest is where I used to walk and play with my dog all the time. And normally this would be the kind of project that I would be really excited about. But instead, I'm here really to voice my deep discomfort with it and with the lack of integrity of this process. My experience of this project has been that it has eroded my community. It has been of a group taking public land without permission during a pandemic, telling our neighbors that they were just going to go ahead anyway. This project took away our access to an area of the park that, contrary to the proposal, was regularly used. It does disrupt access to the B2B trails in Leslie Woods, and it will do that more if it expands. I see this happening pretty much every day when I'm in the park. It took water from Arrowwood, albeit not that much, but it did take water from Arrowwood that our members pay for. And you guys didn't seek community input on this project until after the fact. And so this feels like asking for forgiveness, right? Not for support or for permission. And my experience talking with our neighbors has been that there isn't unanimous support for this project in our community, that some of us are uncomfortable, are not in favor, that most of us didn't know what was happening when you guys were putting this in, that there are other areas of the park that are better suited for accessibility, particularly for those with mobility challenges, like that area of the field that, you know, certainly there are peripheral areas there that could be used. And that would allow for expansion if the project is successful. And I've been very uncomfortable with the way that this oversight and input process has been gone about kind of backwards and has been skipped over, and that land that should belong to everyone now doesn't feel that way anymore, right? And so leaving aside the many problems with the project itself, right? The prior use of the site, the impeding of access of the trails, this is not how government should work, right? This feels like someone took advantage of a lack of oversight during a public health crisis and took over public land, and that now we're having a pro forma meeting about something that's already been installed. And what I've been experiencing has been a loss of a public amenity and a real loss of a real erosion of public procedure and public trust. And it's unfortunate because this would normally, like I think I said, be the kind of thing that I would be really jazzed about. And instead, every day that I walk into the park, I experience this as a loss, and I experience it as a taking at a time when we're seeing government federally behave in this way. We are seeing a backwards dealing and backroom dealing in Washington, and that's what this feels like, with a lack of transparency and coming into this project after the fact. So, you know, I just wanted to voice my discomfort with this procedure and say that I really wish this had been gone about in a different way.
Thank you, Pam. And I'm sorry that you didn't feel like you could just communicate directly with me, since we've been neighbors for a long time.
I mean, it was a pandemic and nobody wanted to get close to anybody, and it was,
so,
you know.
Right, I mean, that is what it is. And, you know, it's possible to find us, and I'm really sorry that you feel that way. Obviously, many people in our immediate community have been very excited about it and have felt like we are making an effort to offer something to the community and to assuage those exact feelings. So genuinely, we apologize if in your experience that part backfired, and we did seek to reach out to our public officials and understand how this would work. And it was a very brief period of a misunderstanding between us and our council member, which is simply human and also happening in a pandemic. And then from there, we have absolutely worked hand in hand with the city and been available to receive public feedback. So, you know, I'm sorry if it feels unsettling to you, and that's really what I can offer there. So thank you for your feedback.
I really appreciate you coming and sharing with us and being part of the community engagement. I just want to reiterate that that sort of feeling of the land being taken away was absolutely never our intention. And really grateful to have this opportunity now to be able to have these conversations with the community and see if there's a way that we can create a solution going forward for the best of, for the good of the community, because people's experiences of the park matter. And we're grateful that you're here and sharing.
Okay, Terry, I think you had your hand up next.
Thank you. I'm Terry. I moved to Arrowwood in January and immediately took to the trails to Leslie Park and walking my dog. And actually, I encountered Shanasi one day and she quickly recruited me to this project. And I feel like having the gardens with the trails is an enhancement. Like, people specifically go to garden parks to walk through the gardens. And so I have people come visit me, you know, with the COVID, we're doing distant walks, but I take people back to the food forest because I'm like, isn't this amazing? And everyone who's been there just loves it. And it's one of these forward-thinking projects that we really need to not just help locally in Ann Arbor, but really seed these projects for the whole country. This is the way we're going to get forward on so many critical problems facing our nation. So I just want to thank the leadership for, you know, taking a chance and putting it out there. It's unfortunate if some people are disrupted by this, but there's so much space in that park that's beyond this. And I'm actually hoping that there'll be future projects in other parks in Ann Arbor, and it seems just such a great match for the goals of Ann Arbor sustainability. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
All right, Nora, you are next.
Hi, I'm going to be a junior. Well, I am a junior this year now that school has started. My homeschool is community and I dual enroll as Pioneer. And one thing that crossed my mind during the presentation that hadn't really clicked before is this hands-on engagement. And that had occurred to me before, but as a community student, like, we have the entirety of downtown Ann Arbor when we're in school to sort of walk about and get food and engage with the community in that sense. And in being at community during those times, like engaging with the farmers market in Carytown and things of that sort, and just the connection between the two of like, oh, we get to engage with local farmers in that sense and talk with them and support them just in our day-to-day lives as students. And now with this this possibility of education in both a physical sense and in just a general sense of this permaculture and of this community engagement, then it's a different level of learning in comparison to talking to someone, asking how you did it, asking how it was, asking like, what's the process? And then in comparison to actually as being a part of this process and being one of the volunteers to help with the physical work of it, like being able to actually watch these plants grow, and my comment of watching these trees grow, like these generational things that I myself have never actually gotten to see the entire lifespan of it, or at least the beginning of its lifespan, is so amazing. And I adore the idea of this project, and that's just another level that ended up coming to me that I wholeheartedly support.
Thanks, Nora.
All right, then we have Leah lined up next.
Hi, I am an Ann Arbor resident. I live on the north side. I actually lived in Arrowwood for, my childhood, and then I moved back there with my husband after college, and we had both of our children in Arrowwood, and we lived there together for 11 years. So I'm really familiar with the area, and I still live pretty close by. I think this is the type of, well, honestly, I've seen over the years in Ann Arbor, sort of any changes to the parks are the type of thing where you couldn't possibly make everyone happy, but I did live in Arrowwood with the dog who I walked and children. And one thing is that recently, this isn't happening during COVID, but more recently, the parks have been used for the soccer schedule. So like through the rec program that the soccer schedule does, the large fields are used in rotation for soccer games for kids on the weekends, which actually was a really nice addition. I loved walking by and seeing the kids. And then it also means that a lot of the kids who live in the area can participate in the sports and get to the games more easily, because they used to be out like way far away and you had to drive considerable distance to get to the games. So this is nice because I feel like it kind of keeps the sports league in town for families. It's easier to access. But what that means is that those large fields have multi-use that's rotating. So the little side areas of the fields, which are kind of the proposed areas from what I can tell from the site, talking about the permaculture project, there may be people who are using those for different things, but they are the least used areas of the park in terms of general population of Ann Arbor. And from what I see, most people in the area using, it's not particularly practical to put it in areas that are going to interfere with like soccer games and use. And I hope that I really like having the sports stuff kind of come back. It was there when I was a kid and then it stopped and then it's been used more. I don't know if they'll do, baseball and t-ball and stuff more, but they use that for the parks in my area over here and they use that for the parks in Arrowwood. And I like the integrated multi-use of the park. I think it's nice when you can get as much function out of these areas as possible. So the layout seems good to me, but that's just my experience with using it. Thanks.
Thanks, Leah. I don't see any other hands raised. Did anybody else want to ask a question or make a comment? Oh, I see a couple more coming up.
I do see this question in the chat. I can go ahead and answer real quick.
Okay.
Someone saying also, this feels like a more congested place. And also asking about maintenance, is it meant to be weeded or is the project based on it tending itself? So part of the model of a food forest is having very, very dense plantings. And so we have plants that are very close together and not creating the same opportunity for weeds that you have in an annual garden where you have one plant and then a lot of empty space. And so the need for weeding goes way down with that. However, there are still weeds that come in. And so the model with the food forest tends to be, you will do weeding at particular times in the year with the growth cycle of those plants when they're most susceptible to weeds. And then later in the year, they will be much bigger and more vibrant. And if there are any weeds, they'll stay lower and can act as a green mulch and actually help protect the soil from erosion and help protect the root systems of the plants that you want to have there without interfering with the aesthetics or the function of the garden.
I'm going to jump in on this too, because Lisa is my neighbor. And part of what I want to say is, in response to this question, which I imagine might be talking about the pause that has happened at the Food Forest site in terms of hands-on activity, because we have accepted the city's redirection and have been working with this entire proposal process and public engagement process. And we have really been in an admin heavy, very demanding part of the project, and waiting until we get the go ahead to take the next steps. So one thing is, with this integrated design, it feels really important to me in particular, who has a hand in the design, that it comes across and feels like a beautiful space. You know, people do a quote unquote food forest in all kinds of different ways, and not all food forests that you see would you walk into and feel like, oh, what a lovely place of repose. But it's very important to us that it feels accessible and beautiful and like an asset to the community. And so, as Robin is saying, once it's further along and once it is more established, there's less hands-on weeding that happens. There will also be some plants that are a part of it that people sometimes think of as weed that are actually a part of amending the soil there. And we're going to continue to provide information there, including signage on site that says, what is this plant's function, or what is happening in this area of the planting, so that even if people aren't on an email list, they can find a way to get on that email list, but they can also just have some on-site, very simple education. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, and then Demina has their hand raised, and Evan after.
Hi, I live next door to Shanasi, and my unit is very near the food forest, and I have a daycare here. And every day I have been taking a walk in the park since probably 2006. And often during that time, I look around and I go, gosh, this is so much land, so much could be done. This could be done, that could be done. Why is it just grass? And, you know, I know why it's just grass and all, but what I wanted to say was this, because I feel like I'm in the park every single day, and I'm not kidding you, even in the winter with kids. And we go to the woods. We often, well, depending on the age of the kids, walk to Black Pond and stuff. I can say that I don't see that part of the park being used that much where it would interfere. And the other thing is, living next door to Shanasi, I have never in my days seen anything ugly in her yard, ever. She has a beautiful garden in her yard, and it's just not her way. It looks overgrown now, but that has nothing to do with Shanasi. In my opinion, and I know her work, it's going to be a more magical and wonderful, beautiful place going forward, because I don't think she will settle for anything less. But saying that, I go through those paths, and I don't see where it would really inhibit getting to the forest, or, you know, going through the woods there. There's plenty of room, in my opinion, from what I've seen. And right now, where the playground equipment is, to me, that looks worse, because to me, it looks like, it makes me cry, because I look there and it's like the weeds are growing up and there's nobody really plays there. And being that I'm in the park, I do try to do my best to take care of the park by picking up garbage, picking up dog poop when people don't pick up their dog poop, and firework debris after fireworks. I think that, and for me during COVID, looking out, where it seemed like a very grim and horrible time, and I looked out and saw them working there, it helped me to feel hopeful. I was like, oh my God, you go, Shanasi, because here I am feeling depressed at home, Wondering what the heck is going on in the world, and seeing somebody out there creating new life, new new possibilities, help to give me hope. And so I thank you for all of your work. I don't know all the logistics. I don't know, what went through. I'm just giving you my experience from one who is in the park every single day. And I started taking my little kids through the daycare. You saw some of the pictures. Those were kids that actually come to my daycare. And I'm, having them walk through and touch the lavender and the other plants there. And they do it every day now. And I think it's brings hope. And I think it's amazing. And I think knowing Shanasi the way I do and seeing her yard, I don't see where there's really, we have to be too concerned about aesthetics. She's a master of aesthetics, in my opinion. But I'm just speaking from my experience. So I wanted to say thank you for letting me share this.
Thank you. I feel sort of nervous and embarrassed now, but that's okay. I'm shy, whatever.
I have a garden in my yard, but people come through to get their kids and they'll go, oh my God, that garden is so beautiful. It's so beautiful next door. So
this is actually, Demina does a lot of work out back there and has cared for part of the park where it's Arrowwood border. It was kind of just left untended. And this is one of the things that Jeff saw when our councilman came out and we walked around and said, this is what I'm thinking. And, this is sort of the range of people who are interested. And this is where we're looking at it being located. And he's like, look at the stewardship. And it was your site. Look at the stewardship that is happening here. It feels like a natural extension of that. And that was at the beginning of everything. Like, we really did seek relationship with the city. We just didn't know how to do that perfectly. So who else? Heather, you said there's somebody else?
Evan's lined up next.
Hi all. So, I've been involved with the project.
Oh, your sound.
You hear me okay?
We're getting a lot of feedback, Evan.
Okay.
Maybe not the headset.
Is that better?
Much better.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
That's much better.
All right. Hopefully the feedback's gone, and if not, I can.
It's great.
So obviously I've been involved with the project, and so I'm quite supportive of it and have enjoyed taking part myself. But I just wanted to offer some of the ways that I've used the park. Me and my kids go out there. They're young elementary school kids, and so I think one of the points of synergy is that it's right next to that playground, because some of the things like the honeyberries, strawberries, some of the other perennial fruits tend to lend themselves to the enjoyment of small children.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been something they've been really excited about, going out, and they're only like 2 strawberries this year because it's the first year, but they found them. And yeah, I neighbor of the place and been happy to offer my support. And I think that it's an opportunity to have a diversity of activities on the site, and just another way for people to enjoy and interact with their park. So me and my kids have liked it a lot, and I've really enjoyed helping out in the ways that I can.
Thank you, Evan. And that intergenerational piece feels important to us, that south border that I think Joe was talking about, maybe it was Ed, I can't remember. We are really thinking about that as a children's garden and hoping that, the kids of the neighborhood will help weigh in, like the families with kids, on some of the annual plantings that would be there, and the way that the path is planned to go gives them sort of this like exciting little maze experience. And you know, and it just in the coalition, as you've seen, we have folks between 16 and 71 years old who have been out there with shovels and, you know, answering these calls and working hard. So thank you, everybody.
All right, Mauro, you had your hand up.
Hi, as some of you might remember, I was one of the little helpers in the beginning, as Shanasi mentioned. I didn't arrive to this project with a lot of agricultural experience or just plant experience in general. Participating and volunteering for this project has been very educational for me. I've been learning more about ecology, both in small and large ways, than all my years of attending white privileged schools has ever afforded me. What's, you know, really been striking me with this project and specifically the timeliness with the impact that COVID has been having on, you know, specifically the United States and you know, just the planet over, you know, and looking at these photos of the wildfires in California. Both of my parents moved to New Jersey from California. I have a lot of family out west. And when you know, I'm walking a dog, you know, pretty much every day, and walking through a lot of fielded areas. And, you know, when I'm thinking about like what has led to these wildfires in California, I've just been thinking about the alternatives to gardening, you know, just looking at lawns and grass, especially in areas that are not being used. You know, I'm for it in the context of, you know, sports and for allowing kids to have, you know, space to run and get exercise. You know, I worked for many hours on the food forest, and I've gotten very intimate knowledge of what the soil is like there. I would scarcely call it soil, I would call it clay. I would call it horrifying a bit, you know, when thinking about just like what the impact of not gardening, of pushing back forests is having on the earth, of, you know, learning through like what permaculture does for the environment, of restoring topsoil, of being able to settle water into the earth, of allowing plants to flourish and grow, and for animals to have a comeback in their natural environments, coming back home in spite of humans taking over the space. That, you know, at this point of just seeing how important it is that we restore the environment to allow the earth to, you know, grow back again, you know, I find to be much more important than, at least speaking for myself, my own personal comfort, you know, specifically as someone who's working on the project, or, you know, I am happy to give up so much space to allow the earth to have her space back. I'm not so concerned about human comfort as I am over the restoration of ecological balance.
Thank you for sharing, Mauro. I mean, I think one of the most hopeful things about this initiative and the initiative of food forests, you know, and regenerative agricultural in general, agriculture in general, is that it allows for both. Like, this is one of the things that's really exciting to me, that feeding the people, which is at huge expense to the planet, obviously, and the way we're doing it is having a gruesome ecological impact, and tending the earth or engaging regenerative agriculture, they don't have to be at odds with each other. They absolutely and positively can coexist. And that, you know, we want to do a teeny tiny demonstration that calls people together, and hopefully will grow. Hopefully it's a seedling that can demonstrate that. I mean, I don't remember, here's our friend Arvind Rao. I don't know if I'm messing up your name, but asking about the economic viability. This is a very small scale project, but there's really great documentation of the economic viability of these models, and the way that in some cities it turns into jobs for people. It's a very real thing, you know, and this is a tiny seedling, and hopefully a positive turn for Ann Arbor if we get the blessing. So thank you. Is that it? Everybody, we good?
I just wanted to say I saw maybe 1 or 2 people who said they wanted to be on the list but didn't share their email. And you can share it to me privately if you would prefer not to show it to everyone. But if you're interested in being in touch, if you want to share your email in the chat, we can make sure to keep you on that list.
The private chat is disabled. The city disabled private chat.
Oh,
To avoid any Open Meetings Act.
Okay, thanks for letting me know, Heather.
Yeah, so you can't do that. But maybe if you want to share your email, Robin and Shanasi.
Sure, I'll put my email in here.
People have been messaging me privately and respectfully. So.
Through the chat?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, maybe it is disabled. Okay, it's good to know.
But this is also my email address if anyone does want to share it to be in touch.
I hope that we'll stay in touch with people. You know, we'd love for you to be a part of it if you are so inclined. Okay, is that it? We're a wrap, 7:33.
Yeah, any other questions? Did anybody have any last questions or thoughts that they wanted to get out there? Okay, then I think it is a wrap.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all so much. Really grateful to you for taking the time for this. It's wonderful to share the time with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for everybody for showing up.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
When is there